Well, Jonathan, thank you for taking some time to visit with Nerd Informants about your latest project. I got the chance to screen the movie earlier today.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
you've got a real winner on your hands. I enjoy
Right.
the deep dive into this world of comics and illustrations and the entire world that makes up, with the writers and everything is, somebody who loves going to Comic-Con and getting to, pick the brains of these writers and artists that are there. It was really nice for once to have a movie that just kind of reflects what's going through their heads and what's going through their lives and what it means to be somebody in that realm.
Right.
Can we just start off and kind of talk about where the idea for this film came from?
Yeah, sure. It's funny you said that though too, because I was thinking how I was just thinking the other day how there's all these movies about making movies. Like the film industry loves making movies about movies. I guess everybody likes to see their own their own job, right? But then you think about all the Marvel movies and DC movies that, all started with comics. And there's not much out there about like really that world. Like how do you make it as a comic artist? Or how do these people get started and what what drives them? How difficult is that? So for me, the inspiration was really this guy I knew growing up and going to the comic shops all the time. I remember having like it's a really old school, but I had like a note card and it had like the addresses and names with the phone number of like each of the comic shops that are, they were sort of in my metro area. And I only went to two or three most of the time, but there was like 11 on the list just in case like you're trying to find that thing and no one has it. So you start making your way down the list. My poor mom, of course, having to drive me to these places. But so I knew this guy, Mike, who owned a comic shop that I went to like all the time. And, he was kind of my dealer for like comics and then comic cards and Magic the Gathering and Spawn and just one thing after another. And as the years kind of went on, he wasn't there all the time anymore. Like he would have some employee running it, and they'd usually just cover and say, "Oh, well, Mike's not in today. He'll probably be in tomorrow." And so finally, one of them said that Mike was across the street drinking. And I mean, talk about your employee throwing you under the bus, right? So I kind of was like 12 years old, so I don't really get that, like why you would be across the street drinking at 3 in the afternoon, but okay. So, as the years went on, he eventually went out of business. And I heard from one of the other owners that he went to drive for UPS. So it was kind of as an adult, like imagining like what was going on there. Because as a kid, you think, man, running a comic shop, like that's my new dream job, I remember thinking, I want to do that when I grow up. That sounds awesome. But you don't think about like bookkeeping and inventory management, leases, electricity bills, all this stuff. So I imagined like maybe there was something else that he really wanted to be doing. And so then I kind of made up this fake story about like that he really wanted to be a comic illustrator. And I then took my own situation where I had directed a movie in my 20s and I didn't get another chance really. Like I was just year after year, I'm doing my corporate video work and paying the bills, but not really getting any closer to where I want to be. And I put that into the character as well.
Yeah.
So it was almost like an element of me, but like in the comic world, which I admit not like I don't necessarily know that much about. Like so I had to do a lot of research, um, and go to some independent comic stores, have them help me and say, hey, I know this is a weird question, but I'm writing this script and I point me to make me a stack of some indie comics that are not Marvel, not DC, maybe not superheroes even, just like what else is out there that you can show me? And it was kind of funny because one of the ones on the stack was actually Paper Girls, which then became an Amazon series down the road. But at the time that I got it, it was just like an indie comic. So that was kind of the initial inspiration. And then I had to go from there and like, what else is part of this world? What helps bring Mike out of these doldrums, this midlife crisis that he's going through? And I kind of thought that Brandon was like young Jonathan. So I almost want to be like young Jonathan meets more cynical middle-aged Jonathan. what's gonna happen, you know? Because Brandon's character is very optimistic, very like he hasn't had the world beat him down. He just knows what he wants to do. He wants to do comics, and if somebody else is doing it, then why not him? And Mike's kind of like, yeah, it's not that easy. Like, unfortunately, a lot of other people want to do what you want to do, and and so Mike has grown very cynical that it's a dream that's not going to happen. It's too far in the past. And so that's what I wanted to explore with the movie is not for anyone specific, comic artist or anyone, but that it's not too late for you. Like people, they tell themselves these things that the world has enough obstacles without you making them up for yourself. So when you tell yourself like I can't do this, I'm too old, I'm already down the career path. That the movie's kind of asking you to consider that maybe you're not too old for it. You can still pursue your passion. Maybe don't quit your day job, but maybe do it on the weekends or nights or find that passion within so you're not just going through the motions, but you're really like striving towards something that you love.
No, 100%. And just the journey that you have Mike go on through this film. And I really like that you do have this character of Brandon there who is really looking for a mentor figure in that realm because he's not finding it anywhere else.
Right.
But whenever he finds Mike and he knows Mike's been a part of this world for a while and he knows the comic book and he knows the illustrations. But what really got to me as we approached the climax of the film, how Mike is slowly becoming the voice of doubt. Maybe you should keep your day job. Don't make that your plan A, to follow your dreams. And that's true character development that you get to see over this time. And I was really drawn to that as somebody who myself for many years have been working in the nerd industry, if you will, trying to find a name for myself along with my co-host for Nerd Informants.
Right.
And that really spoke to me, but I think it's going to speak to a lot of people as well. What kind of reactions have you received thus far, since you guys have been sending out the film and letting people check it out before it makes its grand debut?
Right? Yeah, and I'm really happy that the reactions have been so positive so far. Like, I think you just never know. I mean, you sit with it for so long, and you watch it, seriously, probably 100 times. I mean, not the final version, but versions of it. And and then sometimes it's like even I don't want to see it again because it'll be like okay, watch it for a final pass for the music. And I'm like, I thought the last one was the final pass. Like I've already seen it 5 times alone, just focusing on the music and nothing else. I don't want to see it a sixth time for that. But then as we've gotten it out there, I found it to be really nice that people have even seen things in it that I wasn't necessarily intentionally putting there. We had somebody, one of the hosts who has spent most of his life disabled, and he saw it as sort of a message not to let something like that get in the way of you achieving your dreams as well. And I thought that was really great. I mean, like I love it that somebody can get that out of it because that is kind of like I want it to be something inspirational that makes people sort of rethink the thinking that like once you're on the path, you can't get off of it. Like if you're working your corporate, desk job, that is you're doomed to do that till you're 65 and then retire. And I think that time passes faster than people realize. And I just think you can't like it's not to be negative, but what I think you have to do is you have to envision yourself more towards the end of your life. You're 70 years old, you're 75, and hopefully you have some good time left to enjoy it. But you don't want to be sitting there in that position going, gosh, like what if? What if I had just taken a couple more risks? What if I had tried to do something? At least if you try and fail, you know that you gave it a go, right? I mean, you don't have to sit there later and say, what if? You can be like, well, I tried, I gave it my best and it didn't work out, but I found other ways to be happy. I think regret, though, is a pretty bad emotion when it can be avoided in these, situations. So seeing a lot of the responses has been great. The only negative I would say it has been that so I hadn't really read comics since I was in middle school. And so I've done all these interviews and I get worried that it's like, oh, I'm not like a true nerd, but I didn't think of it like I was making a comic book movie as such. I saw it as making a movie about these people's relationships and dreams and the way that we all impact one another. Like that Mike's impact on Brandon actually helps him connect with his dad.
Mhm.
And the fact that like I don't just impact my friends, but maybe something that I do impacts their relationships with other friends. So I think that you get nervous that I'm going to be quizzed on like, I don't know, modern comic history when it's like, I don't know. Like, I just know I was a huge comics fan as a kid and it was very impactful on me, I think, that sense of imagination, world building. And I think that that's part of my journey as a storyteller as well. Like I'm somebody who's always liked to consume stories, whether it's video games or, books or movies or comic books. And there's so many inspirations all around us. So I thought it would be a fun world to be in to deliver this message. Um, yeah.
No, I totally agree. I've always, you know, been a fan of the movies, and obviously I got to use Kevin Smith whenever he does movies. There's always some sort of comic book element to his Jay and Silent Bob movies.
Yeah.
And that's something that drew me to those films in the first place, is that Jay and Silent Bob's characters are comic book characters, and now they got to stop the movie from being made. And so that's what drew me to that world, and then his entire universe. So, but for you to see that you guys are in this world, and not only, yeah, the comic shop itself is, I consider myself thinking of it as a character in the film.
Right.
It's
Right.
just this great setting to have these characters in, and it kept me entertained. As fact is, I'm constantly looking throughout the shop, and whenever I was seeing the comic for the mask, and I was seeing, the comics for the others through things, and I'd see an action figure. Oh, I have that, or that's something I want, or that's great. So I totally agree that this universe that you've placed these characters in is totally fitting, and I really hope that audiences connect with that as well.
I hope so. I really do. I mean, I feel like we have a movie that if we could just get get the word out and start that early buzz, then it can kind of build from there. And I think that's just how it goes when you have a smaller movie. It almost has to be more grassroots and people say, "Hey, I saw this movie, you should check it out." And I'm really, happy the response has seemed to be so good so far. You just don't know, like, once it gets to a bigger audience. I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. But I guess like one of my producers said, you have to kind of, you have to almost step away. It's like you have a kid, and then once it goes off to college, I mean, you did what you could, and you're still there for it, but like, it's gonna have to make it on its own. And so my producer's like, look, we did everything we could do, we worked our butts off, but now our baby has to go into the world and it has to stand on its own 2 feet.
Now, I really am curious, because I love these little behind the scene tidbits about how movies get made. And you were right earlier when you said, I mean, people are interested in how the movies get made. What was this experience for you to, bring this idea to life and get it on film, and then, bring this cast together, and, how did all the pieces come together to make this film happen?
Yeah, so well, I will tell one funny story that I don't think I've really like told much. I've alluded to it maybe a couple times, but so I was actually trying to get the rights back, if you will, to my first movie because like it didn't make its money back, but it was my money, and I had cut the producers in, and it's like you're not going to get your percent back because. I mean, I'm still owed money like a decade later. So I was like, is there any way you guys could sign off on this? Turn the movie over to me. If it ever makes money down the road, I'll take care of you. And so that was why I sort of reached out to my producers again. And I happened to call one of them, and I just crazy timing. I think it was Saturday morning. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to be in Vegas next Wednesday. Do you want to have lunch?" And thought, that sounds fun. Like I haven't really caught up with him for a long time. And that was April 20, 2022. And so I took my wife. So I was like, "Oh, you should meet Scott. It'll be fun." Like, I mean, it's like a blast from my past. So then we had this like 4 hour long lunch, and we're just talking about the pandemic, how it's been so slow. He hasn't been able to do anything. And so then he asked me about any scripts I had. So I kind of said, yeah, I have about 6 scripts, but you know. I'm in my mind, I'm like, yeah, not that we could afford to make. And so then he's like, you have anything that we could make? And I said, I've got one script we could probably do for $1 million. And then he's like, okay, let's make it. And I was like, right now? And he's like, yeah, why not? What else are you doing? I'm like, nothing, I guess. I don't know. I got to think about it a bit. And so then we're like walking away from the lunch, and I was just totally silent. I'm never silent. I just didn't say anything. And my wife is like, "What are you thinking about?" And I was kind of like, "I don't know. I'm thinking, I mean, I do want to make another movie. I mean, maybe this isn't exactly the timing that I thought of, but maybe he's right. Why not? We're not really doing anything else." So then she said, "I think you should do it." And so I kind of started down this path, and it's real slow until it's real fast in film. It's always like that. So once we agreed to work together, we're kind of workshopping the script more, trying to figure out where should we shoot it. They said, let's shoot it in Nevada. And I said, I can go to LA if you want. They said, no, no, there's a good tax incentive. Let's just give it a go. Let's try to do it there. And so I thought that sounded kind of fun. And then we head towards casting, which is casting's a really hard part, and it's really heartbreaking all the time because once you make an offer, you get your mind like kind of set on that person, even though you shouldn't. And so you don't know what you're waiting for though. Like, are we waiting for them to read it? Are they thinking about it or what? And so then sometimes, it'll be weeks later, and now your mind has already made the movie with this person in it. And then, oh, they turned it down, they're not interested, or they come back to you and give you an offer. Like I think Justin Long wanted $400,000, and we're trying to make a movie for $1 million. That's like almost half the budget. So that wasn't really gonna work, which is too bad because I think he would have been a good choice too. But then, of course, when you actually make the movie, now I can't imagine it with anybody else. Like, I was so happy to get Jesse. And it was really, I'm not really a morning person. So it was really exciting for me. But I remember being woken up by the phone call because I only had 2 people on my Pierce Do Not Disturb, not my wife or my dad. It was the 2 producers. My dad can wait. So they call and wake me up, and they're like, "Hey buddy, we're making a movie." And I'm like, "We are?" And like, "Yeah, Jessie Metcalfe said yes." And I'm like, "Uh-oh." And so I'm excited, but I'm also like, "Uh-oh." That means like it's time to go. And so of course one of my producers says something like, "Yeah, you know how things have been a little slow lately? Yeah, those days are over." He's like, "Prepare for 16-hour days from now until we film." So that's kind of a little bit of an insight into like how you get this thing off the ground. And then pre-production, of course, is just it's just one thing after another, figuring out how you're going to do everything. And everything is important, but it's also like, sometimes overwhelming,
Oh yeah.
like exactly how to put this whole thing together, what we really need. And I remember it being whittled down. Like the very first schedule I saw, we had 18 days to film. And I thought, that sounds pretty good. Like in my mind, I'd kind of mapped it. And I was like, I think, yeah, 18 seems great. And then it was like, it's going to be 17. I'm like, 17 works. It works. And then it was 16. And I was like, okay, guys, I think that's the minimum of what I can imagine. And then it's like, well, it's going to be 50. So we shot it in 3 weeks, 15 days, and it had to be like perfectly planned because the logistics of like when you're on a tight schedule, it matters where something else is, right? So like if you're gonna film in the park and then later that afternoon you're gonna film in an office building, The office building can't be across town. It has to be within 6, 7, 8 minutes
Mhm.
because you just can't move everything over there. So that was probably one of the big challenges where it's like I may like another location, but it's not convenient, so we can't shoot there.
Oh, I love it. I see that that's the kind of behind the scenes stuff I love knowing. And, and I'll say, while Justin would have been great in the role, I could definitely see him there. Jesse knocked it out of the park. I loved him as Mike. I thought he did a fantastic job. And honestly, I would love to see where his character goes next. Like, I was definitely drawn to his character and, his characteristics, his attitude, his feelings on different things, and how he brought this character to life was just very blunt. And
Right.
I love that aspect of him. So as he's, not to spoil it for the audience, but as he's diving further into this comic book world, I'd love to see more from him. So I
Yeah.
think it's great casting, and the entire cast that you got is great. My girlfriend and I were watching this film, and we could really connect with a lot of the characters, and even the guy playing Brandon. Like, I even know somebody here locally that kind of looks and acts like Brandon. And I was just like, all right, well, this is definitely somebody I can connect with as an audience member because I know them because they're right down the street. so,
Right.
so well done on the casting as a whole.
Thank
Uh,
you.
and I don't want to spoil anything, but I don't think I am because it's in the trailer. But you've got a couple special guests that pop up, a couple cameos. How did you pull those off? And
Yeah, that
of course, I'm
was
referencing Mr. Roberts and Mr. Top
yeah, Mr.
specifically.
Thomas, Scotty. So yeah, those were really fun. So as we got closer, it's like you're all hands on deck with getting your main things figured out. It's like, okay, we know he's going to be an unknown, but like our Brandon has to be really good because if he's not, the movie's going to sink. Let's be honest. Like he's the co-lead. And so then once you kind of get those things, you start trying to figure out like opportunities. So Trevor Einhorn as the antagonist, he did a great job, and I knew him from Mad Men, and I didn't watch The Magicians. I still want to. I will watch that, but I guess that was a show he was on, and we there were other fun offers there. Like I think we tried to offer Frankie Muniz for the antagonist, which I thought would have been hilarious. I would have liked that too, but I can't remember why that was a no. And so then they kind of approached me with the cameos, and it kind of came one after another where it was sort of like, hey, what do you think about having Eric Roberts in the movie? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that sounds great, but like with what money? Like we don't really have the money for that, do we? I mean, and so his wife and manager, Eliza, was like, oh no, he's really reasonable. Like you can afford him, trust me. Like we make something happen. And he actually recorded a video audition. Like I
What?
couldn't believe that because like Jesse didn't audition. None of our leads auditioned. They just were chosen because they were known commodities. And so he sends this thing in. And I'm like watching the video, like, no way. Like, what? How does Eric Roberts think he needs to audition for this? And I was like, this is great. I mean, even if he doesn't, even if he's not in the movie, I got this, video audition that's pretty cool. And so then we made it work. And the Carrot Top thing kind of came about, and I thought that would be great because I want to really place it in Vegas, but not be like it's not Vegasy like The Hangover, but the city means something to the movie, like that a guy like Carrot Top might come into a local comic shop, and that another person might agree to signings because they want to go to Vegas and gamble. That it's like a fun city. So then we had Murray Sawchuk, Murray the Magician, and he's the nicest guy too. He puts on a great show. I just watched one of his shows about I think 3 or 4 months ago, and it was cool seeing him again, saying hello. He's always very supportive. I have to tell you, we angled for the ultimate cameo, and it didn't work out because of timing alone. But we were trying to get Nicolas Cage in the movie because he lives here in Vegas.
Oh my
And
gosh.
And so my producer went to high school with Nicolas Cage. Like he knew him from way back in the day. They worked on multiple movies together. And I am a huge Nicolas Cage fan. Like I'll watch anything he's in. I don't care like what it is because he, like he said, maybe every movie isn't great, but he brings it. He's always fun to watch. And so I wrote a personal letter to him saying that the first movie we ever played in my dad's home theater was The Rock. And I actually made sure my dad just sold his house, and I made sure that the last movie that was ever played on that home theater while we owned it was also The Rock. So it's like a little bookend. And so basically, Cage's representatives got back to us and said that he really appreciated the letter and he absolutely would have wanted to be in it, but he's over in Europe filming. And it's almost it was like almost worse than a no because it's a yes, but like if you were not filming right now. And I'm just like, oh no, because I had this idea, of course, if we had a cameo, we couldn't have used it in the trailer, we couldn't have used it to promote the movie, nothing like that. But it would have just been fun. Like you would have seen it and been like, is that Nicolas Cage in this tiny little indie movie? So I wanted to have him come in and then Mike to just barely look up, be like, "Hey Nick," and then Nicholas Cage just walks by and is like, "Hey Mike," and then he just goes to the back and starts looking at comics. Like that's it. I thought that would have been the perfect cameo because it implies that he's in there all the time, and like him and Mike are close, but it's like not. They don't really need to talk about
Yeah,
it.
no, I
I
love
just
it. I love it. Because you're absolutely right. The audience would be like, "Wait, is that Nicolas Cage?"
yeah.
But yeah, that's totally how Mike would have reacted. It would have been, the
Just
fan appeal is over for Mike. Like maybe the first
right.
time he came in, but
Yeah.
after that, it's done.
Just another Tuesday, really.
Uh-huh.
And so I thought that was like the Carrot Top one. We had a lot of fun with that because that I had somebody ask me in one of the interviews, like, oh, I don't know, like how I wrote that. And I said, I didn't. Like, I agreed to the cameo and I just figured we'd wing it. And so that's what we did. So when he got there, and he's like, he was so cool and fun. And he's like, hey, I have an idea for the scene. And my idea was pretty similar, but he's like, I just want to come in and I want like Mike to have set aside some comics for me. And I'm like really excited about them because they're hard to get. And I was like, yeah, all right, yeah, sounds great. Let's do it. And so then they start doing it. And the first takes were like, it was like F this, F that. I mean, it was constant swearing. And it was so funny because we were all just trying to stifle laughter. And one of the producers runs over and he's like, "Get a clean take, get a clean take." And I'm like, "Oh man, but that was so funny." And it's like, "You never know where it's gonna sell to. We have to have a clean take." I'm like, "Okay, all right, we'll do a clean take." And so we did leave a swear word in the trailer that you saw. And what's funny is that the distributor told us that they will not be running that version of the trailer. They're cutting that swear word out. So if you see the trailer now, you get to see it. But I assume the official Quiver trailer is not going to have that. It was
I love it. I love it.
what can you do, you
Uh,
know?
Oh, that's a blast. Well, man, I could pick your brain all night, and I've taken up too much of your time, but
Oh
I
no, it's
got to tell
okay.
you that this has been great. I love getting to learn all this behind the scenes stuff about movies and getting to pick the director's brain and the writer's brain, especially. So the fact that I got you two in one here has been great. Uh,
Right.
I want our audience here to be able to find out about when the movie's coming out and where they're going to be able to find it and all that. So can you fill us in on when they're going to be able to get their hands on the comic shop?
Yeah. So, okay, so it's coming out to digital outlets April 11, which is all your usuals where you prefer rent or buy on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, and I think there's a couple more Fandango now, things like that. And of course, we're working on it. It's the goal is to get it an actual streaming deal after. But these things go in phases. Like you
Mhm.
see Lionsgate do that a lot, where a movie comes out, you have to rent or buy it. But down the road, you can see it on Stars or
Mhm.
Cinemax, and then eventually Netflix or Hulu or things like that. So it's kind of one thing at a time there. But
Mhm.
that's the good news is you will be able to check it out April 11th. And more, if anybody wants more information on me or anything like that, I also have directorbowen.com and at Director Bowen on Instagram. So I try to keep those updated. Just anything new that comes out, anything that's fun. Like I was sharing the other day, I couldn't believe it. I was finishing Eric Roberts' book, and on one of the pages near the end, he said a typical week in the life of Eric Roberts. And that week just happened to be when he was filming the comic shop. So it said like Las Vegas, the comic shop. And I thought that was the coolest thing that we got mentioned in Eric Roberts' book of all things. Like, even though it's a tiny, tiny little mention, it was pretty fun as a reader to be like, hey, that's my movie. That's awesome.
Uh, oh, I love it. Jonathan, do you have anything in the pipeline that you can share or tease with audiences at this time that they can look out for?
I'm working on a couple of scripts. I mean, I've got one kind of horror movie script that I almost saw as like lampooning satire of the wellness industry. Like almost like a guy building it. It's like a cult kind of horror film where he's built a cult around wellness. And it's kind of just, I want to show that if you take anything, even good things, and you go too crazy with it, it's not good. Like you want to be in that golden mean area, not like oh, we've just turned this into a new creepy cult for you. So that's a project I'm kind of excited about because I like health and wellness. So
Mhm.
I'm not trying to like poke fun at it, but I think it's ripe for a horror film. Um, and I really like to explore the horror genre. I've got another script that's done that's like a thriller kind of horror thing, and it's really focuses on the importance of memory. So
Mhm.
it's almost like exploring that the basic idea is what if you took a bunch of criminals and then you imprinted like a new set of memories? They thought they were someone completely different. But the experiment, of course, goes wrong because it is a movie. And their true nature starts bleeding through. But the problem is our protagonist is wrongly convicted. So now he's in this black ops testing facility with a bunch of psychopaths, and one by one they're waking up, like Manchurian Candidate style. So that was kind of another one that I've got ready to go. I think it could be made not expensively, but I still think you'd need probably 4 million, 5 million, because you really need a little star power.
Yeah.
Even just I've got a character who like is the military dude who's always behind the desk and he's like over satellite. So you could get somebody like a Nicolas Cage or Mel Gibson, shoot him out in a day or 2 days and he would be in the movie throughout, but like you don't need him on set that much.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the idea. Unfortunately, these are the funding realities of making movies now. It's like you got to get the star power to get the funding,
Mhm.
but you have to have a script that these people would agree to, and it's not an easy process. But I definitely have other ideas I'd love to explore, and that's what I hope is that Comic Shop can lead to a third movie and a fourth and whatnot.
Well, I tell you, man, make them happen, and you've got a place to promote here on Nerd Informants anytime. That this has been an absolute blast.
Yeah.
Just thank you so much for letting me pick your brain and for sharing about the comic shop. And I'm really looking forward to audiences getting to see it if they haven't already, and getting the chance to stream it. Any parting words, Jonathan?
Oh, I did think I should mention also, I don't have an exact date, but we just got accepted to the Beverly Hills Film Festival.
Oh,
And that's like April 1 through 6. They'll give me a date in the next couple days, I think.
okay.
If anybody is in the LA area, then come say hi. I think that's going to be our makeshift cast and crew premiere. So I'm pretty sure Jesse will be there, trying to get Tristan there and everybody else, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So come out and check it out if you want.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I hope that that cast reunion gets to take place because that would be amazing to get to have that in front of such an amazing festival. So,
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time.
no,
And
of
thanks for
course.
checking out the movie too. Of
Yeah,
course.
no, it's a blast. I love it, and I'm going to be sharing it with everybody. So, uh,
Sweet. Sweet.
So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night, and hopefully we'll get to talk again in the future.
Absolutely. Hopefully so. Have a great night.
You too.